Goonland Productions presents the Omega Cast with your host, J.P. Whitman.
Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of the Omega Cast. This is me, your host, J.P. Whitman, sitting alongside my trusty companion,
John Kearns. What's going on, everybody?
Yeah, and it's been a great week for wrestling. We got a lot of news for you. We got a couple of reviews for you, and we have some questions from some people on the Instagram that we are going to address. The first bit of news, John would like to give all of you. It's about a special event I think you've heard of that's happening in September in Chicago.
We're going to be talking about the Bullet Club's privately owned event, All In. We're going through a little bit of stuff here. We got Cody and the Young Bucks are announcing that All In will include more big name talent and a championship match. Looks like the development of the Cody and the Young Bucks All In show has been one of pro wrestling's most interesting recent stories outside of the ring, and the trio from the Bullet Club kind of took up a bet from Dave Meltzer that Ring of Honor wouldn't be able to sell out a 10,000 seat show, and they did so in 29 minutes and 56 seconds, was it? 29 minutes and 56 seconds. And that's big right out of the gate. But I'm going to let my boy JP talk you through some of the stuff that's happening while I look up all who's going to be there.
Yes, it has been said it's going to be a big weekend. Conrad Thompson has partnered with the Bucks and Cody to put on StarCast, which is a huge kind of convention of sorts with a lot of wrestling personalities from the past and wrestling podcasters. There's going to be a CM Punk signing at 1 Hour Tees, which is the Pro Wrestling Tees store in Chicago that weekend. And how fitting it is for CM Punk to be involved into the biggest middle finger to the man that runs the pro wrestling business, Vince McMahon. But I digress. Also, on the Edge and Christian podcast, Cody said that there's going to be a major tailgate, possibly an outside battle royal called All Out. But John now has the full list of personnel that have been announced for StarCast and All In.
All right, now, obviously this event isn't happening until September, so this is pretty much, it should be an incomplete list, but it's still a very impressive one at that. So obviously we got Cody and the Young Bucks. They're going to be there. Cody's actually going to be contending for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship against Nick Aldis, whom Impact Wrestling fans would know as Magnus.
Also, if Cody wins the NWA World title, he and Dusty will be the only father and son duo to have held that title.
Now, along with Cody and the Young Bucks, we have a special guest of theirs, Stephen Amell, star of the CW show Arrow, made by DC. As far as other Bullet Club personnel, they've announced Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, Marty Scurll, and the wife of Cody Rhodes, Brandy Rhodes. Moving on from them, we've got Ray Phoenix, Pentagon Jr., IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Kazuchika Okada, Joey Janela, Jay Lethal, Son of Havoc, also known as Matt Cross. We've got not Flip Gordon, but he's probably going to be there anyway. And as far as the female talent, so far we've got Deonna Purrazzo, Britt Baker, Penelope Ford, Chelsea Green, and Tessa Blanchard. Now going off on the StarCast, which is taking place the day before. We've got WWE Hall of Famer Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. We've got X-Pac, WWE Hall of Famer Terry Funk, WWE Hall of Famer Diamond Dallas Page, Christian representing the E&C part of awesomeness, Bruce Pritchard representing Something to Wrestle, Eric Bischoff representing 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff, Conan from the Keeping It 100 podcast, WWE Hall of Famer Jeff Jarrett, Lex Luger, Macaulay Culkin, and Matt Cohen, stars of the Bunny Ears podcast. We've got from the King with Jerry Lawler, Jerry the King Lawler. We've got from the What a Rush podcast, Road Warrior Animal. D-Generation X star Billy Gunn. From What Happened with Monday, Tony Schiavone, who's also from MLW, right?
Yep, MLW.
Also from MLW. From the J.J. Dillon Show, J.J. Dillon. WWE Hall of Famer Tully Blanchard. From The Art of Wrestling, Colt Cabana. Also does commentary for Ring of Honor now. We've got Sean Mooney from Primetime with Sean Mooney.
Sean Mooney used to be on all the Coliseum videos from WWF back in the day. He was a commentator for a long time until he got his dream job as a newscaster.
Oh, cool. That's a cool one. From Down and Dirty with Dutch Mantel, known to WWE fans as Zeb Coulter. We've got stand-up comedian Ron Funches. We've got from Sitting Ringside, Dave Penzer. From Being the Elite, Papa Buck, Matthew Lee Massey. WWE Hall of Famer Teddy Long, WWE Hall of Famer Ron Simmons. We've got from Pro Wrestling Torch, Wade Keller and Bruce Mitchell. Blue World Order from ECW, Blue Meanie. Former WWE superstar and current Impact superstar James Ellsworth. Also from Keeping It 100, Hurricane Helms. Also from Keeping It 100, Disco Inferno. ECW alumni Shane Douglas and Mikey Whipwreck. From Wrestle Crap, R.D. Reynolds. From Medusa's Unthrottled podcast, Medusa, a.k.a. Lunger Blaze. As seen on NXT, Leva Bates. We've got from Wrestling, from Marty and Sarah Love Wrestling, Marty and Sarah. From the WWE Network original Holy Foley, we got Noelle Foley, daughter of Mick Foley. We've got from Why It Ended with Robbie E. We've got former WWE star Kevin Sullivan. From the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez. The Ghost of Joey Ryan. That's from a Being the Elite bit. From Botchamania, Matthew. As seen on the Mae Young Classic, Mia Yim. Lucha Underground and Impact Wrestling star Brian Cage. Ring of Honor and Impact star Moose. Santana Garrett from Women of Wrestling. Former WWE star Joey Mercury, that's a cool one. Women of Honor star Mandy Leon. Impact Wrestling star Jimmy Jacobs. WWE Hall of Famer, maybe not Hall of Famer, but WWE legend Magnum TA. And from Impact Wrestling, Tessa Blanchard. And also a lot of the people from All In will be appearing at StarCast as well.
Also announced was Gail Kim recently. You already went over the list of wrestlers, right? Did you mention 619 Rey Mysterio?
No, he wasn't on the list for some reason.
Yeah. Rey Mysterio is going to be there, and they still don't know his opponent for Dominion yet, but he's going to be there as well, so keep your eyes out for that.
Hoping for Will Ospreay.
I'm hoping for Marty Scurll, Will Ospreay, the Jushin Thunder Liger match. So segueing from All In, we've got some New Japan news. A week before New Japan does their show in California, Kenny Omega has put together a New Japan wrestling event in Daytona Beach, Florida on June 29th to help out the CEO Fighting Game Championships. Kenny Omega is an avid esport player. He's been involved in CEO Fighting Game Championships before. I know there's a video online of him and Xavier Woods at a huge hotel convention playing Street Fighter together, and 2 out of 3 times I'm pretty sure Kenny won. So this is really cool because all of the New Japan events that have happened in America so far have only been on the West Coast. So this is going to be a chance for the East Coast fans to spend less money for less harder trip. You know, instead of going all the way across the country, you could just go right down the coast. Or if you're on the bottom half, you could just drive on over. Another cool piece of information we've come across this week was Roman Reigns responding to Steve Austin saying that Roman Reigns should turn heel. And I know you were excited to talk about this, John. So I'm going to let you.
So, WWE News, Roman Reigns responds to huge Stone Cold Steve Austin claim. Basically, on one of the recent episodes of the Steve Austin show, he was asked, so what do you do with Roman Reigns at this point? And he responded, for him to have the biggest run, you've got to turn him heel, and he's got to perform and let loose. Now, the thing about this is Roman Reigns actually responded to this via Twitter and never really said that he disagrees with Steve. What he said verbatim is he said, I think everybody has their opinions. Like ice cream, everybody has their flavor, everybody has their opinion. It's Stone Cold Steve Austin. He definitely knows the area and the territory that I'm in. He knows what it's like to pull the trigger and be a workhorse. So I think there's definitely a lot of truth in what he has to say, and I value his opinion. Is it going to happen? I can't guarantee that. It's one of those situations where you kind of got to take it week by week and just understand the role. I definitely think there's a lot of great truth to what he's thinking and his knowledge in the game, but at the end, Stone Cold is not my boss.
I think it's a very public relations type of response, but I'm interested that I'm hyped that he even gave a response whenever he really didn't have to, which makes me think that in his own mind, he probably wants to go heel. He said that he thinks he's heel already because people boo him, and the only other person who would understand that is John Cena, but we as fans never see Cena as a heel. We don't see Roman Reigns as a heel. So you could spin that story however you want, Roman, but you're not heel. You're the golden boy. So, yeah, him talking about what Austin said makes me think that in his mind he wants to go heel. I mean, the best part of him was whenever he was the badass muscle of the Shield when they were heel. Roman is not as bad as everyone says he is. He's actually really good. It's just he's been shoved down our throats so much, and we don't like that, you know? You could be a big guy, and you can get over organically like Braun Strowman. You could be like a Vince McMahon type of guy, you know, that everyone attributes to Vince liking, but it has to be organic. And this whole Roman Reigns experiment, I mean, they keep going back to the same formula, like the Authority holding him back and this and that. They've already done that. They've tried to make him John Cena. They tried to make him Daniel Bryan. They haven't found what Roman Reigns is. And I'll tell you what Roman Reigns is. Roman Reigns is long hair, good-looking guy in a suit without that Shield gear, with new music, and I'm better than you. I'm from a historic wrestling family, which already makes me better than the entire roster. That is how you book Roman Reigns. And he probably knows it too, but he doesn't sign his own checks. like he said about Stone Cold.
Take the dumbest chest protector off of him.
So we got a lot of news coming out of the United Kingdom this week. John's going to cover the United Kingdom Tournament too, but before we get there, it has been announced for ITV that the World of Sport is coming back. Last year, I believe they did one show or like a special. World of Sport was an old television show on in Britain and the UK, and it was mainly where the people over there got their wrestling. Guys like Robbie Brookside and Johnny Saint and people like that were featured on World of Sport. But we hear that Wade Barrett, who is Stu Bennett in real life, is going to be a commentator and an authority figure for World of Sport. Will Ospreay, Davey Boy Smith Jr., Grotto, Moose, Primate, Joe Hendry, Martin Kirby, Leston Rees, Viper, who you would know as Piper Niven from Mae Young Classic, Kaylee Ray from Mae Young Classic, B. Priestley, Shaw Samuels, Douglas Williams from formerly of Impact, Rampage Brown, Lionheart, Nathan Cruz, Kip Sabian, Robbie X, Adam Maxt, Gabriel Kidd, CJ Banks, and Liam Slater are the top names for World of Sport. Grotto will still be featured, but they're not building the show around him like they did last year. Will Ospreay and Davey Boy Smith Jr. is slated to be like the biggest match or feud. The show will be starting around July 21st. They'll be deciding after about 4 shows in the ratings if it will be renewed. Revolution Pro Wrestling are no longer allowed to use WWE UK guys. WWE has signed roughly 20 new performers to keep them away from ITV. Some of them being Tony Storm, Joe Coffey, Zach Gibson, Dave Mastiff, El Ligero, Travis Banks, the current Progress World Champion, Chris Brooks, Jenny, Kenny Williams, Flash Morgan Webster, who made his debut on this past week's 205 Live, and Eddie Dennis are named. 12 of the 20 were originally scheduled to work for ITV. Wah, wah. And yeah, that's pretty crazy stuff. So we're seeing more aggression out of the WWE side and where their UK division may be going as things shape up. So speaking of that, the full roster reveal for the United Kingdom Tournament 2 has been revealed, and John is going to give it to you.
Yeah. Now, the dates for the second WWE United Kingdom Tournament have been announced. The first round is going to take place from June 8th to June 10th. That is actually going to be at the Download Festival, which if you've been watching NXT and stuff, you would know that WWE has become a big part of the Download Festival over in the UK for the past couple of years.
I believe last year or the year before, the singer of Slipknot and Stone Sour, Corey Taylor, punched Baron Corbin in the face, and that's pretty rad.
And the Download Festival is also last year where Pete Dunne attacked Mark Andrews while he was performing on stage. So, June 8th and June 10th at the Download Festival is going to be the first round. Quarterfinals and semifinals are both going to take place on June 18th, and the finals are going to take place on June 18th, with the winner of the tournament going on to face Pete Dunne on June 19th. So going from that, we do have 2 special exhibition matches already announced for June 18th and June 19th. June 18th, they're going to do British Strong Style versus the Undisputed Era,
which I am heavily looking forward to. Yeah. That is a very, how would I say this? It's a very well-balanced match. The guys there will balance each other out, and it's just going to, since it's happening in the United Kingdom, all bets are off.
Absolutely. So, obviously, that would be Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate, and Trent Seven against Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roger Strong. Now, on June 19th, the big match of the night is obviously Pete Dunne defending the UK title against the winner of the tournament. But also, Adam Cole, Shayna Baszler, and the Undisputed Era will be defending the NXT North American Championship, the NXT Women's Championship, and the NXT Tag Team Championships, respectively. Now, going from that, we have everybody announced that's actually going to be in the tournament. So they announced these in a 2-part video on WWE.com, where they did 8 the one day and 8 the next day. So, for the UK tournament, we have Joe Coffey from Glasgow, Scotland, Zach Gibson from Liverpool, England, 205 Live star Gentleman Jack Gallagher from Manchester, England, Amir Jordan from Dewsbury, England by way of Pakistan, Kenny Williams from Glasgow, Scotland, El Ligero from Leeds, England, Dave Mastiff from the Black Country, England, Joseph Connors from Nottingham, England, Travis Banks from Auckland, New Zealand, Flash Morgan Webster from Bryn Mawr, Wales, Jordan Devlin from Bray County, Wicklow, Ireland, Tucker from Belfast, Northern Ireland, Ashton Smith from Manchester, England, James Drake from Blackpool, England, Tyson T-Bone from Malvern, England, and a very special announcement, representing the United States from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 205 Live star Drew Gulak.
I find that Drew Gulak being inserted into this tournament a little weird, but he will have great matches with any of those guys. His style fits the UK style. I'm really excited to see what Dave Mastiff, Joseph Connors, Travis Banks. Honestly, my early pick to win this is Travis Banks. He has, in the last probably year, been one of the hottest indie wrestlers on the planet. He's the current Progress champion. Yeah, he's popping up everywhere. He was in the stable. He formed the stable CCK. I believe he's not in it anymore, but that group's still going. He's a beast. He's the Kiwi buzzsaw. But, I mean, there is a load of talent in this UK tournament. And Pete Dunne actually put out a video on Twitter that said ultimately he's happy for the UK guys and that they're growing and everything. But ultimately, he's the bruiserweight. He's held the UK title for a year, and nothing's going to change, and no dreams will be made that weekend.
I love Pete Dunne. I'm a big fan. Having him be on NXT this past week, we'll get into that, but he needs to keep being on NXT because he's so organically over with the WWE Universe, and it was instantaneous. Like, the first time he showed up, people were behind him in the first UK tournament.
And the funniest thing is that everywhere he's been, and including the beginning of his WWE run, he is a natural and a great heel. And to see how he's being perceived and accepted as a babyface right now is just mind-blowing to me. I mean, I'm glad he can pull it off, and I'm glad it's happening. It's just crazy because I would have never thought that could have happened. Speaking of that, we are going to get into our reviews now, and we're going to start with NXT from this past Wednesday. The first segment, Tommaso Ciampa came down to the ring with Johnny Gargano's theme music playing. Before he could talk too much, Candice LeRae came out. And Candice LeRae came out because, if you've been keeping up with NXT, Johnny's incapacitated at the moment because Tommaso has rendered him obsolete at the moment. So we get a lot of back and forth talk. Candice really can't believe how Tommaso has changed, but Candice says Tommaso will know that Johnny was better than Tommaso. He said maybe, but he isn't half the man Ciampa is, and that's why he sent his cute little blonde wife out instead of confronting him himself. He said that Candice was more of a man than Johnny ever was when they lived together. He goes on to talk about their wedding, but before he could really get into it, Candice gave him a real good sock in the mouth. Tommaso backed away and left the ring, and Candice ended up going up the walkway. What do you think about this segment, John?
This segment was really, really good, just sheerly in terms of storytelling, because the Gargano and Ciampa story is probably the hottest one going in WWE right now, and that's all of WWE. The only one that I would put over it is AJ and Nakamura.
Totally agreed.
So, it's very interesting to see because we haven't seen Johnny since last week. Maybe, was that 2 weeks ago?
Probably 3.
Three?
Because last week,
Whenever he was
trying to avenge him.
Yeah, it was whenever he was supposed to fight Aleister Black for the title.
Correct.
Now, Ciampa is... I used to say that The Miz is the best heel that WWE has. Tommaso Ciampa has very much so surpassed The Miz in terms of being a heel. Now, the whole coming out to Johnny Gargano's music, or normally coming out to no music, the man spoiled Avengers Infinity War for an entire house show crowd while they were waiting in line with a megaphone. He came out and said everything that happened in the movie.
Did I ever tell you the story? When the last Harry Potter book came out, I went to Walmart at midnight, and they had a pyramid of the books, and all these people were going to grab it. So I picked it up, and I'm a Harry Potter fan, and I went to the last page, and I started reading it out loud at the pyramid while people were coming to get the books. I'm surprised I didn't get punched. I got so many terrible looks, dude. That's hilarious. My thoughts on this segment was, like you said, good storytelling and continuing the hot feud. But I eventually want to see Candice become her own superstar, other than just Johnny Gargano's wife and like this piece of the puzzle to this storyline. And I think eventually we will get that. It will come in time. It's I just think that she deserves a little bit more, and they'll give it to her. Segment 2 had Brandi Lauren versus Lacey Evans, and I thought this match, it was a squash match in favor of Lacey. I thought it was great because Lacey is one of the few women heels and on NXT, and it's good for her. It's good for her because it legitimizes her in a landscape where their champion is the most legit female wrestler possibly of all time, depending on how Shayna's friend Ronda Rousey turns out. But there was one thing I didn't like about this match. At the end, Lacey got on the top turnbuckle, gave a salute, and hit a moonsault. Then she picked up Brandi and hit her with the women's right, which is basically just a weapon of mass destruction, a punch. And it reminded me of when I listened to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, where they talked about Shawn Michaels. And early on in his career, he would hit the super kick, and then his finisher was like a backdrop or something. And they ended up taking out the backdrop and just doing the super kick, because why would you pick somebody up from such an impactful move and such a cool-looking move to hit something else? So the moonsault should have been the finish, or it shouldn't have been there at all. After the match, as Lacey's going up the ramp, Kairi Sane, who has been kind of taunted and mocked by Lacey Evans as of late, comes out, attacks Lacey, throws her in the ring, goes for an insane elbow drop, but before she could jump, Lacey rolls out and escapes. My thoughts on this are that thank God that this is happening in NXT, because if it was the main roster, even though Kairi is the face and Lacey is the heel, we would get those dreadful USA chants. But luckily, it's a NXT crowd who are a bit smarter to the product. John, what did you think about this entire ordeal?
I mean, I'm a big fan of Lacey Evans, and I think I have been since she showed up.
Yeah, she has superstar written all over her.
Yeah, she's definitely better as a heel, though, I think, because she has a very unique character, and she's pulling it off very well. And she's 100% committed to the character, like a Velveteen Dream, like Aleister Black, like Bray Wyatt. Because if you're going to get a gimmick like that, you got to be 100% in it. And Lacey has that in spades. So I would not mind seeing her become number one contender for the women's title on NXT, even though it would essentially give us a heel versus heel match. That's not always a bad thing, especially if the heels are over anyway.
I like your ideas. I'd give the female shot to Lacey a little bit later down the line, and I'll tell you why in a few. Segment 3 and 4 were both interview type settings. The third segment was a recap of Velveteen Dream and Ricochet from last week, where they were talking about who should challenge Aleister Black next. We get Aleister walking into the performance center or to his car. It's nighttime, and they ask Aleister what he thinks about Ricochet and Velveteen Dream, and ultimately he says a champion has a target on his back, but when you step in the ring with Aleister Black, you become a target. I liked how nonchalant and calm he spoke. It speaks to his character, calm, cool, and collected. He speaks bluntly, calmly, and right to the point, which is how they should treat him. Segment 4, we saw Dakota Kai outside of the Performance Center during the day, where we're supposed to believe that a bunch of reporters are asking her questions. One asks her about Nikki Cross, and what is Nikki Cross's role in Dakota Kai's career, and Dakota Kai says she has no idea what Nikki Cross is up to. Somebody else starts asking about Dakota Kai's workout routine, and before she can answer, we get a little Scottish girl with a cell phone out saying, I have a question, and she says, when are you going to fight Shayna? Of course, this is Nikki Cross, and she says, with fear comes opportunity. Face your fear and fight. Nikki then leaves as she laughs, and Dakota Kai is bewildered. I'm going to ask you what you think about these things, John, before I give my 2 cents.
As big a fan as I am of Lacey Evans, I'm just as big a fan of, like, Dakota Kai, Nikki Cross. There's honestly not anybody on NXT that I truly dislike right now. So I'd be happy with anybody taking spots or having opportunities. And I would like to see this kind of evolve into Nikki Cross almost training Dakota Kai and like making her accept the craziness that comes with Nikki Cross and maybe using it for herself as well.
Yeah, I totally see a mentoring happening here in the future, and Nikki Cross's chaosed mind can help Dakota overcome her fears of Shayna Baszler. The only thing is, if Nikki's going to mentor Dakota, I would like to see Dakota ultimately lose to Shayna, but with a lot of shine, coming out of the match better than she went into it, and it leading to a Nikki Cross and Shayna feud. Because, yeah, Shayna did MMA, she was trained by all these special people like Josh Barnett, and she's so special, and she can do wrist locks and arm bars and this and that. But Nikki Cross is the actual lunatic fringe of the WWE, and you don't know what's coming. So I think they would make a perfect pairing in the ring. The next segment, we get the Velveteen Dream versus Ricochet. This match was shaping up to be as good as the Velveteen Dream versus Aleister Black. It never got to that point because Lars Sullivan came out and decimated both men. And he screamed that the NXT title belongs right here. He's basically saying there's no one standing in his way. And why should we believe there is? Killian Dane isn't there anymore. And the only reason he didn't get the North American Championship is because it was a ladder match and there was 5 other guys involved. I don't see anyone standing in his way. But back to this match, there are a few spots there. I mean, even the feeling out process was just really, really good. And at one point, Velveteen did a real deep arm drag that sent Ricochet outside. Velveteen went to do a flip, but he caught himself on the apron, which looked really cool, which lended itself to Ricochet hitting the classic Jericho springboard dropkick. Then Ricochet went to do a dive, but realized Velveteen was coming in, so he did a pose. He springboarded off the ropes and did a pose. And as he did the pose, Dream slid in, and they both locked eyes. And it was just, you could feel it coming through your screen that this is a feud that we need to see. So after they got decimated, I thought that we would get a triple threat #1 contender match, but later on in the evening, we find out something else for next week. John, how did you feel about this?
Ricochet and Velveteen Dream is going to steal the show at NXT TakeOver Chicago, because I don't see any reason at all that match shouldn't take place at that event. That'll be the night before Money in the Bank. Now, all the stuff that people would complain about with Ricochet on the indies, they don't seem to have those same complaints on the NXT stage, because his style fits in more with the WWE style. Meaning that it's very flashy, it's meant to look good, and him and Velveteen Dream had a natural chemistry that I haven't seen in a long, long time.
Going off what you said about Ricochet's style, I think he is unjustly judged. His early career, he was definitely a spot monkey and looked for those big moves. But since his the past 2 years, right before he came to WWE, he most certainly worked on his ground game, his submissions, his suplexes, his in-ring persona, his poses, everything that would make the WWE want to sign him. And we've seen him in NXT so far, and he's been decent on the mic, and his entrance right now is one of the best entrances in wrestling. That music, the little keys at the beginning, the That needs to go throughout the whole song. I don't know why they didn't do that, but he is truly going to be a huge future superstar for WWE, and so will Velveteen Dream if the main roster handles him correctly. But yeah, man, these two guys, I can't wait to see what happens.
When it comes to the Velveteen Dream, look past the weirdo gimmick, look past the Prince look, and just look at a guy who is as good as he is that's only been wrestling for 2 years.
2 years?
2 years is how long he's been, that's how long he's been training at the Performance Center.
Yeah, but he was wrestling in Maryland.
I mean, he was, but I can't imagine that he was at the level he was at the level he is now back then.
I mean, he was tag champs with Leo Rush.
Right.
In Maryland wrestling. I forget what the actual place is called, but yeah, he did some independence and stuff like that. And but yeah, it's been 2 years since he started at the Performance Center, and he has shown a lot of growth, because we always knew that he had the passion. Like from Tough Enough, he had the passion, he had the athletic ability, but could he formulate a character? And he's proving everyone that he most certainly can. The next segment, we get another character that is new to the scene of NXT. That is the Finest, Kona Reeves, versus the Cruiserweight Classics, Raul Mendoza. You want to take this one over, John?
Sure thing. So, Kona Reeves has been having these vignettes over the past couple weeks, which led to sort of a re-debut for him. And Raul Mendoza as well has been showing up a lot more often on NXT. We haven't seen much of him since the Cruiserweight Classic, other than the few showings on NXT he's had. But he's been on there for like 2 weeks in a row now, and that's the first time that's happened for him since his Cruiserweight Classic debut. So they clearly see something in Raul Mendoza, or they wouldn't be keeping him around like they are. Now, Kona Reeves, before this whole repackage, he was a very, very bland, generic wrestler, and he just didn't do much for anybody. And now it seems like the people seem to really be against him, but they should be, because he's a heel. And the whole Finest gimmick is really working for him, I think, so far. And I see nothing but potential for Kona.
I'd have to agree. Before he got repackaged, he just had Hawaiian shorts on, and he looked like Keanu Reeves. That's where Kona Reeves comes from. Now he's grown his hair out. He has blonde highlights, which look ridiculous. He comes to the ring wearing a fur like jacket with his name embroidered on the back, and a long gold necklace. Everything has to be the finest for him. When he takes off his entrance gear, he actually has a very old school late 80s, early 90s type heel look to him in his attire, and he wrestles like one as well. He does this really cool fall back from the second rope elbow. He does the dropping punch like Ted DiBiase. He speaks and yells during the matches. It seems like he's committing to it. And like you said, it seems like he's being hated. And I would draw a comparison from the Finest Kona Reeves to Elias, where Elias was hated by everyone in NXT. But when he got to the main roster, he found his niche. And I think that could possibly be what's going to happen with Kona Reeves. So after Kona Reeves obviously won, by the way, he hit the the Hawaiian drop, which is like a Samoan drop, but he drops you face first instead of on your back. Segment 7, Kathy Kelly is going to interview William Regal, but runs into Ricochet. Ricochet says he has something he wants to talk about, and that's Lars Sullivan. Velveteen Dream shows up. He wants Lars Sullivan too. Both of them are questioning each other. Dream goes to open up the door for himself, but Ricochet, being the gentleman that he is, opens up the door for Velveteen Dream, and they both go in to talk to William Regal. So this part obviously makes me think, oh, they're going to do a triple threat for the number one contendership. Segment 8 had Heavy Machinery and TM61 in the back. Heavy Machinery and Otis and Tucker had a hilarious bit about Mother's Day and taking Otis's mother out for steaks, and they said to TM61 they don't dine with cheaters. I'm glad that both were featured on the show at some point somehow, because I like both of these teams, even if they're not in title contention. We get this from NXT a lot, you know. They have an hour-long show, but they make the most of it. They put people on there even for a little bit, but that little bit counts so much towards their development, and I love that. How do you feel, John?
About what? About the Heavy Machinery segment?
Yeah, that and the Dream Ricochet going into Regal's office.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Heavy Machinery, and I'm a big fan of TM61, and it seemed to me like TM61 was maybe moving into a heel type role with Heavy Machinery.
Oh yeah,
a little bit. Yeah,
they've pulled tights. They've had their feet on the ropes. They're transitioning into it.
Yeah, they're kind of, and it seems to be a very natural evolution for them, which is cool to see whenever they can pull it off. And with the Ricochet and Velveteen Dream going into Regal's office segment, you see this. I love how often we see the superstars talking directly to William Regal, not in the ring.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
He's a very approachable general manager.
Yeah. And I get so not upset about it, but it's very predictable when you're watching Raw and SmackDown when two people are going to be yelling at each other in the ring. You're just waiting to hear either the Kurt Angle music or the Page music. And I don't get that. It's like, I get it, but I don't get it. It's one of those things. Because I might rather see them just going into the office and being like, hey, this needs to happen. I'm sick of this guy. Give me a match with him. And we do get that sometimes. What do you think?
Well, I think it has to do with William Regal's true role in the company. Yeah, he is the GM of NXT, and NXT is an hour-long show, and they tape in advance, but he's also a talent scout, and he's majorly involved at the Performance Center and stuff like that. With Paige and Kurt Angle, their roles are to be on TV and to be like superstars, even though they're not wrestlers. So, I mean, that could explain, you know, your complaints and everything, but I totally understand what you're saying, and I like the fact that that it's different than main roster programming. So this leads itself into the main event, which was Pete Dunne, Oney Lorcan, and Danny Burch against the Undisputed Era, and my God, this match was full of action. We got a lot of, in the beginning, the Undisputed Era was dominating Danny Burch, just quick tags, lots of different types of offense. Of course, Cole would do the kicks, Kyle would do the submissions, and Roddy would do the backbreakers and such, but they all grounded Danny. Danny eventually backed up into his corner when he got like a type of full Nelson on Kyle or Roddy, I believe, and Dunne got the hot tag. There were a bunch of hot tags here, Dunne and Lorcan especially. Lorcan ended up flipping over the ropes onto all the Undisputed Era at some point. We had point where all three members had the Undisputed Era and the wishbone, small joint manipulation snap, and there was another point where they all had submissions on. There was just a lot of great back and forth action, and eventually what happened was that Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch did a wheelbarrow DDT to Kyle O'Reilly because Kyle O'Reilly was going for the axe and smash, but Roderick Strong was going for a high knee and ended up hitting Kyle O'Reilly. Maybe it was on Roderick Strong, but either way, it was on Kyle, and Danny Burch, I believe, ended up getting the pinfall victory, which is awesome. Big upset, and it definitely positions Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan better on the show. They could be the next contenders for the NXT Tag Team Championships, and like we said earlier, like Pete Dunne being embraced and perceived as a babyface is just jaw-dropping to me, but gleefully jaw-dropping to me. After the match, we realized that next week we get a handicap match between Velveteen Dream and Ricochet against Lars Sullivan. What do you have to say about the main event and the announcement for next week?
So the main event, six-man tag, was purely awesome. Like, it really was. All the stuff where we saw all six competitors in the ring, but it never felt like the ref was truly out of control, which was a very interesting dynamic and not one that we get to see often. Now, the Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly miscommunication might lead to some infighting, but I don't know if that's going to happen sooner or later. I would assume later. Pete Dunne worked really well with Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan, who are one of my favorite tag teams in NXT right now. But I also love the Undisputed Era, so I was torn in this match, but also I was very excited to see Oney, Danny, and Pete Dunne pick up the win. Now, as for the handicap match, I think we're going to see Velveteen Dream and Ricochet try to work together, but ultimately Dream's ego is going to eat away at that, and they're going to cost themselves the match.
I totally agree with what you said about Dream's ego. And speaking of Danny and Oney being one of your favorite tag teams, they don't have a name yet, and they should be called True Grit because they are gritty. They're down and dirty. They do what they have to, and they just lay it in, man. And I'd say this episode of NXT gets an A from me.
Me as well. It was really good. I struggle to find an episode of NXT that I dislike. So we're going to move on from NXT into this week's Impact Wrestling episode. Not something that we've talked about since Redemption, but it's worth mentioning because Impact is on the upswing, ladies and gents.
That is certainly true. First, we get Josh Matthews hyping the tag match that night, between Matt Sydal and Austin Aries against Pentagon Jr. and El Hijo del Fantasma. We get a video of Brian Cage's World Destruction Tour, and there's hype for Eddie Edwards versus Sami Callihan in a street fight that is brought to us tonight by Tommy Dreamer's House of Hardcore. The first match was DJZ and Andrew Everett, who are calling themselves Z&E now, against the World Tag Team Champions Eli Drake and Scott Steiner for those Tag Team Championships. This match, Z&E got the better of Eli and Scott. They used their fast-paced, quick X-Division type moves to keep them off balance. At one point, Um, Eli Drake was going for the gravy train on Andrew, or on DJ Z. Well, I think it was on Andrew Everett actually, and nope, it was DJ Z. But Everett hit a code breaker and DJ Z turned it into a destroyer type move. Steiner grabbed a chair, but was met with a baseball slide. Eli threw Z out, and he accidentally collided with Steiner. Eli fell over, and Everett hits a standing shooting star press for the win. And we get new tag champs. I thought this may have happened because Scott's contract expired or Eli is leaving Impact soon. There's been a lot of rumors about Eli going to WWE lately. Either way, it was a fun, fast-paced match to start the show. It was a big surprise to me that stars the level of Eli and Steiner lost to Andrew Everett and DJ Z. DJ Z and Andrew Everett talk backstage about overcoming injuries and setbacks. They're very excitable, just like their in-ring work. And if I was them, I'd be just as excited because there's been a lot of setbacks for both of them, especially DJ Z. What did you think about this, John?
I think what you said hit the nail on the head. Scott Steiner and Eli Drake just simply weren't ready for the style that Z and E were going to bring to the match, and it ultimately cost them their tag team titles. And I love seeing Z and E as tag team champs because DJ Z is one of our local boys, and I love seeing him doing well. Now, moving on from the Z and E match, segment 3 was Madison Rayne, the wife of Josh Matthews, joining him for commentary. And the match that we got was Kiera Hogan versus the debuting Tessa Blanchard. Now, this was Tessa's in-ring debut after she attacked Kiera Hogan 2 weeks ago when she was fighting Taya Valkyrie. And Kiera and Tessa Blanchard really went at each other, even though it was Tessa's debut match. It wasn't a squash, and normally a debut match would be a squash. So I really enjoyed the back and forth between Kiera and Tessa Blanchard.
Yeah, Kiera they call her the girl on fire, and I find it funny that she is not Caucasian, but her hair and her attire is red and yellow, and her last name's Hogan. Yeah. It's fantastic. I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but they call her the girl on fire, and she was hitting on all cylinders, man. Everything Tessa gave her and mocked her for, Kiera would come back with, a splash or a dive or, a bunch of forearms. Or at one point, she did a leg drop to the back of Tessa's head. But Tessa is undeniable, as you may have heard, and she ended up winning the match with her hammerlock DDT. This match was perfect for both of them. Kiera got the shine, Tessa won and got the shine. It was, like you said, man, it was good for both of them. It wasn't a squash. After the match, Tessa goes for a hammerlock DDT again, but Madison Rayne stops it and runs Tessa off. Now, at Redemption, we had Tessa talking on commentary during Kiera Hogan and Taya's match, I believe. Or maybe it was just an Impact. I'm not sure. No, she made her debut at Redemption, I believe. And she was talking to Don Callis but she was really giving it to Josh Matthews. And Madison Rayne made a statement on Twitter that was like, talk to my husband like that again. And I was like, wait, is Madison Rayne going to come back to Impact? Is she allowed to? Because she's been doing a lot of stuff for Ring of Honor, Ring of Honor's Women of Honor. And it looks like she has. And I'm excited for this eventual match. Tessa is done a lot on the indie scene. She was in the Mae Young Classic. She is really, really good. She's probably my favorite female wrestler next to Toni Storm that's not in the WWE. And Madison Rayne is she's a veteran. She has had many different parts of her career. She was eye candy, and then she was very character driven, and now she is more in ring driven. And so I'm looking forward to this. How about you, John?
Looking forward to what
the eventual Madison Rayne Tessa Blanchard match.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't. I'd be surprised if that didn't happen at Slammiversary, which is coming up soon. Well, not soon-ish.
Yes, TNA Impact made a couple of statements this week. Rich Swann will be at the next TV tapings, and Slammiversary 16 will be happening on July 22nd in Ontario, Canada, and that's going to be awesome. But this match, we find out later in this episode, is not going to happen at Slammiversary. Anyway, segment 4, we get a recap of the backstage attacks that have been happening. Grotto inquires with Jimmy Jacobs and Congo Kong, basically assuming that they're behind it. Jimmy Jacobs denies it and says, if you keep accusing us, you'll be Kong's next victim. Katarina, former Winter in TNA, and Kaylee Burchill in WWE, who is Grato's girlfriend, says, do not let them talk to you like that, and it looks like a match will be happening. This is a logical feud, both bigger guys, but characters are polar opposites. Katarina may have gotten Grotto into some big trouble, though. We next get an in-depth recap of Eddie Edwards and the Sami Callihan feud. Looks like Impact is fully behind Callahan's mega heel heat and promoting this feud, which is the biggest story going in Impact right now. The 6th segment was Pentagon and El Hijo del Fantasma backstage talking mostly in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, so that's cool. Didn't really need to be there. So these 3 segments were all pretty much like recap and hype. So we won't spend too much time talking about it. We get information that 2 weeks from now, there will be a special episode of Impact called Under Pressure, with Austin Aries going against Pentagon Jr. for the world title. We also hear that Matt Sydal will wrestle El Hijo del Fantasma for the X Division title on next week's Impact. So we finally get to another match, which is Congo Kong versus Grotto. How'd you feel about this match, John?
I felt bad for Grotto.
Yeah, really. What kind of girlfriend is Katarina, huh?
Yeah, right. But I gotta say, Grotto kind of gave Congo a run for his money for a little bit before just getting, before Congo caught him, basically, doing a lot of like dodges. He actually did get Congo Kong down on one knee at one point. He was able to knock him down.
That was after a Dusty Rhodes bionic elbow and a assisted flying shoulder block off the corner. But we got a lot of, the funny Grotto stuff. Very scared of Congo Kong. Congo Kong no selling. They're really building up Congo Kong ever since his match with Abyss, which I like because the man just looks grotesque. And he should be the next monster of Impact. If you want to make this show new, with the old and with the new kind of deal, and it makes sense. Now, after the match, which Grotto lost, they look to go to beat him up some more, and Katarina goes to look in the ring. Then she steps away and leaves her man that she loves so dearly and kisses almost every time they're on screen together, high and dry. So Congo Kong throws him into the steps, sets up the steps sideways, and looks like he's going to lawn dart Grotto until we hear Moose's music. And Moose comes out. They start brawling. They get in the ring. Congo throws Moose into the ring because of a distraction from Jacobs, but we get a pump kick and a lariat over the top rope, having Moose stand tall at the end of this segment. And I like the idea of Moose versus Kong because Moose... I like the idea of it, but I don't know if they do the feud, whoever loses... you're trying to build up two guys, and they've been trying to build Moose to this world title contender for almost a year now. And they're building up Congo Kong as the new monster. And this new regime of Impact is too new for either of these guys to take a huge loss. So it's kind of confusing to me, but we'll see where it ends up. What did you think about this?
Yeah, it's always tricky trying to build up two superstars when you're having them go against each other. You can't build two people at the same time if you're going to put them in matches with each other. And I don't know. I think I'd rather see Moose pick up the win on this feud, because I think Congo Kong could take the loss better and still come back from it. Because Moose is a big dude, and not many people have beaten Moose. You know what I mean?
I totally agree with you. We see LAX run into the odd Cult of Lee, and Cult of Lee make fun of them because Conan has disappeared, and LAX push past them, and Cult of Lee says they'll see them soon. I feel like LAX have lost their momentum since the disappearance of Conan. I hope Conan is not off of Impact and he eventually comes back. LAX has been on top of the tag team roster, so this is a nice way to put some shine on some other people, because otherwise, there's no reason why LAX shouldn't be champions. So it's a nice little storyline. Don't understand Cult of Lee at all. Don't get it. Don't understand it. Don't like it. I like the two wrestlers, but the gimmick does not make sense at all. How do you feel?
The Cult of Lee is a very weird tag team. I think the reason that you don't get their gimmick is because they don't seem to really have one.
Well, they wear like stupid, like, what are those shirts? Like Hawaiian shirts sometimes, which makes no sense. I mean, they're from the Carolinas. I'm not from the Carolinas. I don't know what goes on there, but I don't get it. I guess they're like backwoods hillbillies, but in a different kind of way.
I guess so.
Next, we got the Sammy and Eddie street fight from House of Hardcore, and I know you love it. So let's, John, get into it.
Yeah, it was a very it was sort of a quick match, but it was really cool anyway. I'm a big fan of street fights. I like it in any aspect of wrestling. We got a lot of cool kendo stick stuff, some chair stuff. We did eventually see Sami Callihan try to use the bat, but was thwarted by Eddie Edwards with the Boston Knee Party. And Eddie Edwards eventually picked up the win.
Yep. We got a cool spot with two chairs being set up. Sammy went for like a package pile driver, but Eddie low blowed him. Then Eddie went for a suplex, and Sammy turned inside out and hit him with a Falcon Arrow through the chairs. As much as I liked this match, also after the match with Sammy's own bat, Eddie was choking him mercilessly until Tommy Dreamer had to talk him out of it, and security held them off. And as much as I like this match, I don't think it's over, and I don't want it to be over. I could definitely see it happening at Slammiversary inside of a cage or like a last man standing match. I don't think this should be the end. Do you feel the same way, John?
I feel exactly the same way. I don't think the Sammy and Eddie feud should ever end. It should be one of those fight forever feuds like Kevin and Sammy. So, what was next on Impact?
We got some of Brian Cage's World of Destruction tour. It happened in Destiny Wrestling, and he was going up against one of our hometown heroes, Facade. This was obviously edited to fit the time and to show Cage off more than Facade. Facade showed up in Ring of Honor and Impact this week. He's been doing a lot of stuff all over the place, and I hope to see him sign somewhere soon. But this was basically just, they're building Cage slowly, and they're showing you how dominating he can be. Instead of taking a guy like Brian Cage, which you could definitely do, and shoot him right at the top, they're building him slowly so that the Impact fans and the viewers accept him fully when the time comes. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, WWE. How did you feel about this segment, John?
I like Brian Cage, but I'm also a huge fan of Facade and have been for many years because I used to go watch him in the gymnasium. Used to go watch him wrestle at the IWC at our local indie. And Brian Cage is a guy that you build a company around, I think. I really do. He's got the look, he's got the size, he's got the power, he's got the moveset. But I want to see Facade get signed somewhere, either Ring of Honor or Impact.
All right, so we're going to rush through a little bit here. So the next segment, we get the flashback of the week, which is great. Promote your application. I wish they'd find another way to do it, but they have to show these matches. And it was a good match. It was Brian Kendrick losing his X Division Championship against Aries at TNA No Surrender. Then we get KM and Fallah Bahh, where KM gives Fallah Bahh a makeover, and Kira Hogan sees Fallah Bahh and gets all doughy-eyed. I thought it was really funny because Fallah Bahh is money. I think without being paired with Fallah Bahh, KM is just one of those 2005, 2006 muscly, douchey, run-of-the-mill WWE wrestlers. We get upcoming Impact info. 2 weeks is under pressure. It's going to be, like we said, Aries versus Pentagon for the title, and they also announced at that show Madison Rayne versus Tessa Blanchard. Next week on Impact is Seidel and Phantasma for the X Division title, LAX versus Cult of Lee, OVE versus Aerostar and Drago, and Congo Kong versus Moose. We get the funeral for Rosemary next, which I thought was just beautifully and well done. We get the undead bride with the wooden casket in a dark wooded area with all of her ghoulish followers who are also undead brides, I guess. And we get a lot of eerie classical music. We see flashbacks to the match and the post-match. And at one point, she starts laughing and spits fire onto the casket, she being Su Yung. And the casket goes up in flames as the music keeps playing and the laughter keeps going, and that's it. I can see this. Now, Rosemary is the demon assassin. She is a demon. Demons thrive in fire. So I do not believe that we have seen the last of Rosemary. I think we're going to see Su Yung probably pester Allie for a while until Rosemary emerges, maybe with a different look. Some tweaks to her character, maybe coming out more aggressive, but this is not over. But it was beautifully done. How do you feel about this, John?
I really liked it. It sort of reminded me of almost a Broken Universe type segment. I loved it with the creepy music and the awesome character work from Sue Young, who I'm a huge fan of. I love the Undead Bride gimmick as well. And Rosemary is one of my favorites, so I agree with you, and I hope it's not the last we see of Rosemary.
Hell yeah. So then we get the main event, the tag match. Austin Aries and Matt Sydal against Pentagon Jr., El Zero M, Cierro Miedo, and El Hijo del Fantasma. You take over this one, John, and I'll give you my thoughts, because I have some controversial opinions.
So, a lot of good tag team back and forth. It was your run-of-the-mill tag team match. Nothing too crazy to go on, but I like Pentagon Jr. and I like Hijo del Fantasma. Love Austin Aries. I've always been a fan of his. And the Luchadors kind of got the upper hand in this one, I think.
Yeah, we saw Sydal go for the shooting star press, which Josh Matthews always has to say, he's going airborne! Harkening back to WWE's Evan Bourne. And when he went for that, Pentagon caught him midair with a super kick, and Phantasma ended up hitting the thrill of the kill for the win. But my opinions on this match, when the Luchadors were in control, it was like chaotic Luchador tag team wrestling, where one person enters, so they're legal, and then once somebody goes out of the ring, the other person's legal. But then whenever Austin Aries and Sydal controlled the match, it was much more of a standard tag match, and I really enjoyed. I enjoyed Sydal and Aries working together. They did it. They had some really good chemistry. At one point, Sydal slingshotted Phantasma into an elbow from Aries. Phantasma falls onto Sydal's knees, and Austin Aries slingshotted in with an elbow drop to Phantasma. But really, I like all four guys, and I'm looking forward to all of their singles matches in the next 2 weeks. But, the tag match fell flat to me because of the differences in tag philosophies, I guess you would say. You either give me the lucha tag or you give me the standard tag. Don't give me both in one match. Aside from that, I'm going to give this episode of Impact a solid A, maybe A-. How do you feel, John?
I think that's definitely a fair grade. Like we said at the top of this topic, Impact is on the upswing, and it's 100% due to the management of Don Callis and Scott D'Amore.
I just realized Josh Matthews did the whole show by himself. He felt more genuine than he has ever felt on Impact. So, instead of cringing at everything he said, I actually listened. And at the beginning of this match, he mentioned New Japan. He said that Taiji Ishimori has debuted in New Japan as the new Bone Soldier for Bullet Club, and I thought that was a big deal to me. In this changing landscape of professional wrestling, Impact seems to be Switzerland. They're neutral. They'll give footage to WWE. They'll help out the indies. They'll take on Lucha Underground. They'll partner with that one. They'll partner with this one. They went over to New Japan and apologized, even though the people who run Impact now had nothing to do with Okada and Tanahashi's run there. And this Josh Matthews mentioning Taiji Ishimori in New Japan just makes me think that Impact is on right path. They're leading the change in wrestling, where Triple H and NXT and everything starting to, but they're not fully open to it because WWE is WWE, and we see that with how they're treating the UK and Rev Pro and World of Sport. But Impact would work with anybody, and so after that big statement, we have, after these reviews, we are getting into 3 questions that were submitted to me on my Instagram account. The first question comes from, let's see here. John, which question do you want to go over first?
Let's do the whole one.
Okay. So, we had from... he's got such a... Oh, it was from the... Okay. Talking Suplexes Pod asked us, who hasn't been announced for All In that you would want to see? And John, I'm going to let you answer first.
Yeah, see, my thought on that one, it's a pretty obvious answer. We haven't seen any of the LIJ guys announced for this show. Tetsuya Naito, Hiromu Takahashi, Ibushi, Evelyn Sonata, and I think they should obviously be on the show. But even not going with them, get a guy like maybe Y2J Chris Jericho on there, because he's going against Tetsuya Naito at Dominion, and I don't know. I think, like I said, this show's not till September, so there's a pretty good chance that anybody that we mentioned is going to be announced, but I'm going to go ahead and get JP's take on this.
Yeah, I have a 2-part answer here. Obviously, John said Chris Jericho. That's my first pick because Jericho can do whatever he wants. He goes wherever he wants, and why wouldn't he be at All In? I don't understand why he hasn't been announced for All In yet. Maybe he'll make a surprise. But my other choice here is, CM Punk is doing a signing at 1 Hour Tease. And him showing up for All In would make so much sense because of his beef with the WWE. And this being the largest outside of WWE wrestling event in the United States since a 1993 Luchador special. And I don't include WCW because WCW is now owned by WWE. I feel like him showing up just for the signing is kind of like a spit to the face of his fans, because it's like, oh yeah, you still revere me and love me for the thing I used to like, but I'm going to take your money even though I don't like it anymore. So even if he shows up and gives a GTS to somebody or a running knee, I think it'd be awesome if he showed up at All In, even if it was unannounced. The second question we get is from Sadababa City. We have had many interactions on Instagram. He's a follower of mine. I'm sorry if I did not say your name correctly, but I said it so slowly that I think I did it right. You're probably a Ricky and Morty fan, judging from your picture and all that bubba-dubba-dubba-dub stuff in your name. He asked, do you think the relationship between Don Callis, New Japan, and of course Kenny Omega could possibly lead to Impact eventually seeing a time when they work with New Japan again? Also, are there any particular matchups you'd like to come about? If so, we just spoke about this a little bit at the end of the Impact talk, and I definitely see it happening. as long as the new president of New Japan doesn't take. The new president of New Japan is a Dutch guy. I don't remember his name, but he said that New Japan wants to go head to head with WWE. Now we've seen Impact give footage for Table of 3 on WWE Network, and WWE shouted out their Global Wrestling Network. So as long as the New Japan president doesn't take offense to that, or doesn't see that as anything threatening to their business, I think it would be great for New Japan to partner up with Impact, because Impact is on Pop TV, not Access TV. Both are hard to get, but Impact's slightly more accessible. The more access that New Japan can get over in the States is better for wrestling as a whole. And there are countless matches, man. I mean, especially since Impact has this working relationship with Lucha Underground. I'd love to see Okada and Brian Cage, Kenny and Austin Aries, Pentagon and any member of LIJ, Ray Phoenix and Will Ospreay, even though we got it Battle of Los Angeles and PWG, I'd love to see it again. Phoenix versus really any high flyer from over there. There's so many matches. John Morrison, Johnny Mundo, Johnny Impact, representing Impact against anyone from New Japan would be amazing. But John has been grabbing at the mic, so I'm going to let him talk.
The answer to will we see the relationship reignite is yes. And the match is Austin Aries, the belt collector, taking the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship off of Will Ospreay.
Who?
Will Ospreay, isn't he the current champ?
Yeah, who's doing that?
Austin Aries.
Oh, my.
The belt collector.
That'd be awesome.
Collecting more belts.
Yes. Collect all of the belts. Procure!
Yes. Ospreay versus Aries would be absolute money. Or Skrull versus Aries. Skrull versus maybe Skrull versus Eddie Edwards would be a good one. Or Sami Callihan.
Eddie Edwards versus Kushida.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. That'd be really good. Hiromu Takahashi versus Johnny Mundo is one that I'd love to see. But let's move on to that third question.
The third and final question comes from Anthony _Abine. I hope that's how you spell your name, that you say your name. He asks, if somehow Kenny Omega does not defeat Kazuchika Okada at Dominion, who the hell takes the belt off of Okada? LOL. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Well, Anthony,
I think we both have the same answer.
I think that Kenny Omega will lose to Okada. There's a couple of scenarios, two of them being fantasy booking, and one of them being what I truly see. Fantasy booking-wise, I would love to see Kota Ibushi be the one to lose, to make Okada lose, and because that would open up such a cool storyline and feud between Omega and Ibushi, because Omega tried 4 times, put on these 6-star matches, and has been heralded as the greatest gaijin in New Japan history, and he didn't dethrone Okada, but his best friend and some think significant other, kayfabe-wise or otherwise, Kota Ibushi did. So he could go rogue from the Bullet Club, still be in the Bullet Club, but kind of like not talking to anybody, very brooding, go against Ibushi. A lot of things could happen there. Another person that I would fantasy book to beat Okada is Chris Jericho. If Chris Jericho became an IWGP champion, especially against Okada, who is being booked as the greatest New Japan champion in all time, it would just be amazing and just show to the career and character of Jericho that he is anything and everything pro wrestling. It would also be cool if he won and was wearing the Alpha Club shirt and let in all the old Bullet Club guys from WWE and kind of started a new Monday Night War feud between New Japan and WWE. But obviously their president probably would not allow that. But what I honestly think is going to happen is you aren't going to see Okada lose for a very long time. I think the only logical people who would have been in line to take the belt off of Okada is Ibushi, but Ibushi is always a wild card because you don't know if he's fully signed to New Japan. He has called himself a freelance wrestler, so I don't know if they would put the belt on him. The other person was Katsuyori Shibata, and Shibata we saw at the New Japan Cup last year. He won. He wrestled Okada for the title. They were looking to build him as a main eventer, but unfortunately in that match against Okada, he had an untimely injury, and he's working his hardest to come back, and we don't know when he's going to come back. So I don't see Okada losing to anyone on the New Japan roster for the foreseeable future. I hope Kenny gets the title at some point, but all this stuff with the Bullet Club happening with Cody and all that, I don't think he gets the IWGP title while he's feuding with Cody. And they're doing the All-In show in September, and Cody's wrestling for the NWA title, so that makes me think, is the Kenny Omega Cody feud going to end before then or after then? We don't know, but Kenny has too much stuff going on to dethrone Okada at this time.
Normally, I would agree, but this is Kenny Omega's fourth shot at Kazuchika Okada.
2 out of 3 falls. 2 out of 3 falls, no time limit. So there's no draw here.
There's no draw here, and I think that this is the time that Kenny Omega dethrones Kazuchika Okada.
Well, John, I hope you're right. This has been a great episode. I've really enjoyed myself this past hour and a half or so with my dear friend John. John, also, we got these 3 questions this week. Keep the questions coming. You can find me at the JP Whitman on Twitter or JP Whitman on Instagram. John,
you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, both as jkearns91.
And with that, I would like to say, whether it is morning, afternoon, or night, I hope you have a great one, and peace and love to all of you. Thank you for tuning in to the Omega Cast.